Good morning, everybody. I'm Patrick McDonnell. I'm the Secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, and pleasure to be here with you here this morning. In October of last year, Governor Wolf signed an executive order to help further the cause of environmental justice in Pennsylvania. And we at DEP have recently released a draft environmental justice policy that will help ensure low-income communities and communities of color are not adversely impacted by environmental and health issues. This draft policy is one step toward fulfilling the promise of that governor's executive order. We unfortunately have no shortage of examples across the Commonwealth of instances where residents and communities throughout Pennsylvania bear disproportionate environmental burdens of pollution from environmental racism, exacerbated through policies and practices like redlining and gentrification. Air pollution, water pollution, heavy traffic, land pollution, illegal dumping, litter, climate change, and numerous other environmental harms have disproportionately impacted these communities. This policy will help guide the department in integrating EJ into more aspects of the work within our regulatory limits and help us better engage with communities that have been traditionally underserved. I'll let our Director of the Office of Environmental Justice, Justin Dula, get into more of the details of the draft policy, but want to encourage all interested Pennsylvanians to consider commenting on the policy. That comment period is currently open, and you can submit comments both through email and through our e-comment system. We'll also be holding 3 virtual public hearings to accept comment, and details for all of this can be found on our website at www.dep.pa.gov/environmentaljustice. I'd like to now turn it over to one of the legislature's top environmental justice champions, Representative Donna Bullock. Representative.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary McDonnell. Thank you for the invitation to be here today. As you mentioned, last October, we joined you along with Governor Wolf to announce his executive order on environmental justice. Today's announcement is one step forward in that in that package, in that executive order. You know, when the governor sat in Philadelphia and put out this framework for environmental justice, he was making a promise along with the Department of Environmental Protection, along with members of the legislature. We were making a promise to environmental justice communities, to engage them, to involve them, to include their voices in the decisions that our Commonwealth makes that may impact their health, their water, their clean air, their communities. Today, I will say promises made, promises kept. We know we still have work to do, but today's announcement and the work that you are doing on the environmental justice policy over the next few weeks is just another example of that commitment to environmental justice communities across the Commonwealth. So I want to thank you, Secretary McDonnell, and your team for working with our administration and working with the legislature to ensure that we keep the promises that we make. Sometimes those promises can be just words, and too many communities in the Commonwealth have heard these words before, while their communities continue to disproportionately carry the burden of bad environmental practices. By engaging them in this process, by engaging those communities and wanting to hear their voices during the comment period, and continuing to move forward the executive order, we are showing those communities that we are real and we are serious about environmental justice. The Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus also wants to continue to emphasize our commitment to environmental justice. We hope to be able to pass our environmental justice legislative package, a package of bills that emphasize and underscores the governor's commitment, but make sure that his work and your work lives on beyond this administration. And so as we work forward, not just on the environmental justice policy that we're working on now, we also look forward to working with our new Director of Office of Environmental Justice and with all of the communities across the Commonwealth to make sure that we are doing all that we can within our power, within our wheelhouse, to protect those communities, to ensure that they have safe drinking water, to ensure that their children can breathe clean air, can go to school and not be concerned about toxins in their school building, to ensure that we, for generations, can enjoy the beauties and treasures of this Commonwealth. So again, Secretary McDonald, thank you for including not just the voices of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus, but the voices of communities across the Commonwealth in the work that we do at the Department of Environmental Protection. And again, I look forward to working with our new director, Director Dula, in the Office of Environmental Justice. And with that, I introduce to you our new Director of the Office of Environmental Justice, Justin Dula.
Thank you, Representative Bullock, and thank you for all of your leadership throughout the years. My name is Justin Dula. I'm the director of DEP's Office of Environmental Justice. And I just am excited to have the opportunity to talk about the EJ policy that I had worked with previously, and am excited to take through the public comment period. And though we're just starting the formal public comment period, this draft is really built on years of public engagement. We've taken comments and concerns about the current environmental justice public participation policy that DEP's had in effect since 2004, as well as comments of previous revision effort from 2017, and incorporated them into this draft. Also, we've held informal public engagement throughout the drafting of this policy with environmental justice communities. We wanted to build on those elements around public participation in the permitting process that worked well in the previous policy and clarify them for this update. Community members have identified the need to increase public involvement around unconventional oil and gas initiatives. This policy outlines ways the DEP can help increase community awareness of these projects, given the current statutes in place. We also heard loud and clear that we need to look beyond public participation in the permitting process and work to do that in this draft policy in several ways. This policy aims to move beyond permitting to explore how inspections, compliance, and enforcement efforts done by DEP can better include environmental justice concerns. As part of enforcement, DEP will keep a list of community-identified projects that can be the site of direct investment when there is a violation. These community environmental projects allow benefits of fines to be more directly sent to the affected community. Also, this draft includes climate initiatives to directly engage communities facing environmental justice issues in the creation of Pennsylvania's Climate Action Plan, as we know these communities are more vulnerable to climate impacts. Additionally, we are also looking at where we can target grants to benefit communities facing environmental justice issues. This policy helps build on this work, which has already started at DEP to diversify our grant program recipient pool. Finally, this policy calls for regular updates. We want the EJ policy to continue to grow on recommendations from the public as we move forward. As Secretary McDonald said, we want Pennsylvanians to consider commenting on this policy. The comment period is currently open until May 11th, and you can submit written comments both via email and through our e-comment system. For those more comfortable commenting verbally, we'll be holding 3 virtual public hearings starting on April 5th. The details of this can be found on our website, dep.pa.gov/EJ policy revision. There are also tools on the website to help people better understand the policy details and share information about this policy with your networks through newsletter articles, social media posts, and a flyer that can be posted on community bulletin boards. We would appreciate everyone's help in getting the word out about the comment period for this policy, because we really do want to hear from all Pennsylvanians. So I think with that, we open it up for questions.
Yeah. Any questions people may have?
For Representative Bullock, if I might. Your bill package that the Black Caucus has put together. Is that in Energy and Environmental Resources right now? Do you know where those bills are?
Yeah, I can find it out for you. There's 4 bills, I believe. One is to codify the Office of Environmental Justice. The other is to codify the Environmental Justice Advisory Board. And then there's a bill to create an Environmental Justice Policy Center. And then the last bill is a bill that will create this permit process to have applicants to DEP require them, if they're building or a facility or opening a facility in environmental justice community, that they have to look at the cumulative impacts in those communities, and it mirrors a bill that was similarly passed in New Jersey. So the last bill I introduced, the third bill Chris Rabb introduced, that's the Environmental Justice Policy Bill, and then the first 2 that codify the office and the board are Representative Malcolm Kenyatta. And I can surely find out where they are in the process.
Now that I know the sponsors, I can look them up, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
What can you do now to make sure the policy is durable into a next administration?
Sure. So there's a couple things, right? One is just the fact and noteworthy that the Office of Environmental Justice, as the representative just mentioned as an example, the executive order passed in October is the first time that that's been officially recognized on anything but an org chart. And that requires an action to take away. Policy, once we have it out there, it's something that the department follows until we formally withdraw that. So that is, we've been following the public participation policy under environmental justice for almost 20 years now. This is the next evolution of that, and as Justin mentioned, something that we built into it to make sure that we are continuing to look at it and continuing to update as new and better information becomes available.
From the informal public participation, from the research, I guess, that you've been doing to prepare the new policy, is there a story that sticks with you? Is there an example that you can point to of, like, this is where an improved policy would have made a difference, and this is why we need to pursue it now?
I'll see if Justin has anything specific. The one thing I'll say on our end, and again, it goes to the broader issues and executive order, is we did a series of listening sessions, a series of roundtables across the Commonwealth. And one of the things I learned through that process was we would go in with staff and I would ask, I said, what do you think we're going to hear about in this? And it might be air quality or mining, and you go in and the community always has something else on its mind. So just having that interaction is incredibly important, and in particular in Shamokin, we actually are getting federal resources to help them. They identified blight as an issue. So we're bringing in some EPA dollars to help them do an assessment of their abandoned lands there. Their brownfields. So I don't know, Justin, any more to add?
Sure. Just, yeah, I think that's a great example of Shamokin, and I think also just hearing the frustration that people have had that it only related to the permitting process. I think people wanted to see that, but they were really communities already having industry in their area were like, what can you do to help around this person who is in violation of their permit? How can we more directly see the benefits of those fines and impacts? And so, that came directly from community input. And then also the thought of the climate crisis was something, and how there was a specific request from community members dealing with issues of flooding, concerns around the climate crisis, and thinking of how we could directly include that in the policy.
Do they specifically say climate crisis when they're talking to you, or are they saying we have all these floods now?
Yes.
How do they talk about it?
Yes. Typically community folks do not say climate crisis. That's those sometimes they have, and but yes, typically it is increased flooding, increased heat, people not being able to afford or having air conditioning in their homes because they didn't need it. Their parents didn't need it, and now, they're experiencing health effects from not having air conditioning and not wanting or being able to spend the money to have air conditioning. So.
Because I find it to be a personal question for me. Before I became a legislator, I didn't have those words, right? I didn't see myself as an environmental justice advocate. It was not something that was talked about in my community. It was not something that was talked about in my household. It's actually, when you talk about environmentalism, for me, I thought it was something of privilege, right? It's something that if you had the privilege and the time to talk about it or go on some great, AmeriCorps trip while you're in college, then great, but most of us had to put food on the table. And so while folks may not have the language to talk about the fact that they're having flooding in their homes or it's hot or their children are sick, they do understand what that means. And so I've learned about climate resilience and all these other issues as a legislator, but what I've been very intentional about is when I go back into my district and I go back into my communities, I speak with my neighbors and my friends and the block captains that are cleaning their blocks and making sure that dumping doesn't happen in their community. I talk to them in the way that we all talk at the dinner table or we all may talk at the grocery store. Folks know what is happening to their communities. They understand what is happening to their health and their children's health, and whether they or not they have the terms or the words to use it, they do want to see the change, and they do want to make sure that they have a place at the table to make that change happen. So.
All right. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your attendance here today, and looking forward to future conversations about EJ. Thanks all.